My name's Astarion, and you're watching the character sheet on ComicBook.com. Gather your party and venture forth, darling.
Welcome to the Character Sheet, ComicBook.com's official tabletop and fantasy YouTube channel. I am Christian Hoffer, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Neil Newbon, who's has been a voice actor for a while and is about to be basically in the ears of just about everyone who listens to or watches our channel, because he is the voice of Astarion,
darling. Astarion.
In Baldur's Gate 3. And we're here to talk about Baldur's Gate 3 and probably a lot of other stuff too here. So first and foremost, thank you very much for being on the show.
For you and Peter who asked me to on the show in the first place. I really appreciate talking to you. And yeah, I'm just super excited about the game and be able to talk to people about our experience and all the people that have championed us as well throughout the whole process. Yeah, so thanks very much.
Yeah. We have to get the important question out of the way first. When did Larian first approach you with the idea of the bear sex scene?
Straight to the T. All right, very good. How do I word this? It wasn't quite as straightforward as that. It was more, I mean, Larian are an amazing company, and I trust them implicitly. I've had an amazing experience on this. And we've done some batshit crazy things along the way. By the way, can I use profanity? I can't remember if I...
Yeah, we should be past the first minute, so you're good to go.
Yeah, so we've done some batshit crazy things, and I'm involved in like mocap stuff, stunt stuff, in-game locomotion, as well as directing, as well as playing Astarion, etc., etc. So I've seen quite a lot of like interesting stuff that we've done. So it didn't really faze me. It was more like, okay, yeah, that's a D&D thing. I'm sure that'll work out. So they didn't really approach me. It was more like we discovered the fact that obviously Halcyon can do this with any of the players, with the player itself, themselves, but also with any of the origin characters as well. The interesting thing about that is I actually directed, Dave and I are mates, so I actually directed Dave for that session of the bear sex, to then find out later that they used the Astarion model to have sex, well, having sex consensually with Dave character as a bear. And I basically directed him in that. So it was really weird. It was like, I did that, and yet I'm in that, and I'm responding to. It's just really weird, very meta. It's like too meta, I think. Meta squared. It's very strange.
How do you direct a bear sex scene?
You don't really start with the bear sex. What you so Dave is a fantastic performer. Dave Jones is an amazing performer, and he plays Halcyon beautifully. So first and foremost, I think the most important thing, if we're going to be slightly serious about it, I guess, is there has to be some trust between the director and the actor. You have to know boundaries. You have to talk about boundaries. We do have intimacy directors available, which is amazing. I think we're one of the first games to ever do that as well. I might be wrong in that, but I'm pretty sure that's actually one of, maybe not the first, but certainly not many, I think, games at this point have actually done that. But Dave was very cool, and we talked it through about the idea of it. We basically approached it as a romance. The bear sex thing was an aspect of that, an element of that, but it made sense because he's not a bear, he's a druid that wild shapes, right? So for him, we talked about the idea, well, actually it was really led by Dave a lot, because Dave knows the characters so well. We've all been playing our characters for so many years now, about 4 years, that we intimately know these characters. So for me as a director, I was very much led by, okay, tell me about your take on Halcyon, tell me about his point of view about this, his point of view about relationships, about romance, about vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And we just basically started like that. And it was very straightforward in a way. It was very funny. There was definitely moments where both of us looked at each other like, "What? That was great," you know. So, but he's such a great performer to work with, and obviously, you know, we did talk a lot. We checked in with each other a lot. Mm-hmm. I checked in with him a lot to make sure that he was okay with the material that we're doing, and you know, he was very, very good at taking his character and playing this moment truthfully. Now, stepping back from the moment, it's kind of insane on one level, but you still have to play as an actor and as a director. director directing an actor, you still have to go for the truth of the situation in that way. You have to play it seriously. And to Dave's credit, he's done a really beautiful job with his character. And I'm very proud to have just done I mean, there's many directors at Pit Stop Productions who are doing the audio recording and the performance capture recording, because we do most of group, and there are many directors that worked on Baldur's Gate 3 for the performance side. Amazing to be able to do that with Dave and have that experience. But yeah, I didn't realize we were going to use Astarion as the model, which is just weird. But that was I'd rather tickled me. I rather fancy a fairy.
So you touched on a really a thing that I was going to ask you about later, which is how Baldur's Gate 3 has been in development for years, and Astarion has been a part of the game since early access. So was Baldur's Gate 3, was the experience of being involved with this game a little bit different because of the lengthy early access period? How did that play out, and how did the role kind of evolve, because you've been this character for the last 4 years?
It's been an incredibly extraordinary journey. When I was cast, Josh Whedon, who's at Pit Stop, who's one of the lead heads there. He cast me as Astarion, and I was brought on, which I didn't realize he was a main companion actually at the time. I thought he was a smaller role. And I sort of guessed kind of what the project was, so I knew it was going to be a reasonably long. I don't think any of us realized how long it was going to be and how many sessions. So what it did do, like doing a TV series, actually, it allowed a lot more growth than maybe you might do on a 3-week shoot, where there is a very definite, not always linear, but sometimes a very linear start and middle and end to a story. Ours was ever expanding. Lots of new things came into it that hadn't been necessarily predicted. At the time, it developed in a way it hadn't been written fully by the time we started, so it was still being written the whole way through. Because for me, I work with an amazing writer, Stephen Rooney, and Stephen, he apparently, I spoke to him, he and I are mates now, so we had a conversation about it, and he started listening to my rhythm of what I did with his lines, and he hadn't predicted with the lines based on the kind of character I was also developing, because I hadn't really fully got the whole sense was or is. And so as I was sort of developing my idea of Astarion, he was listening to that and then writing towards a little bit of my rhythm. Then I'd find his rhythm in the words, obviously, and so I'd start leaning into his rhythm, and it became this very beautiful symbiotic thing where something he'd liked, I'd do a word that he'd like or a phrase that he'd like in such a way that became sort of part of his habitual speech rhythm. Darling, and things like that. So it happened a bit more often than perhaps than it might have done. Shit like that. So it started creeping into it. And I found very much that the rhythm was so easy between the two of us that I could almost sort of not predict, but definitely sense his intention of where he wanted Astarion to go. So it was a really beautiful experience. For me, it was great because we start with Astarion in early access in one place. And actually, throughout the course of the game, you do see him develop quite substantially. And you really go very, very deep into his rather complex character and see many different facets and sides to him. Some positive, some arguably morally negative. But it's been a fucking joy to play. It really has. I don't think I've ever had quite as much fun with a character as I have with Astarion, while still embedding in really serious, heavy subjects that I think the audience are really gonna get a kick out of, and maybe even identify with them.
So had you played Dungeons and Dragons before Baldur's Gate 3?
Geek! I was a geek back in the 80s, 90s when it was not a cool thing to be a geek. I was a games master, player. I think I started my very first role-play game was Dragon Warriors.
Oh wow!
Which was which was it was a really kind of shit knockoff of D&D basically, and it's like that was it's like 5 books or something, and that's the entire thing. I started that in 80. My mates, and then progressed to D&D and Warhammer First Edition roleplay. So yeah, I've been a gamer and a geek for since.
Astarion, he's kind of become like one of the faces of Baldur's Gate 3. He's even graced his own collector's cover of PC Gamer magazine. And you mentioned that this has been one of your most fulfilling roles. Where as you stepped into this role and kind of got to knowing this character, were you anticipating that he was going to be like such a fan favorite?
Yeah, I don't really ever think in those terms. I'm completely blown over and really humbled the community to Astarion as a character, and I'm glad that so many people like the work that I'm trying to present. That I'm trying to create a character that is really fascinating and really interesting, and it seems to have had some traction with people, which is amazing. No, I never really think in the terms of. Oh, sorry. By the way, I'm on a rooftop somewhere in the middle of the Mediterranean. In case you can hear babies screaming and dogs barking and stuff. Not my baby. No, it's not mine. I don't know where that comes from. A little snack. Sorry. Apologies. So yeah, no, I didn't really anticipate anything. I never really do, to be honest. My only real goal is to try and make the best story I can for the character that I'm given. Try and honor that story, play it truthfully, really try and create something beyond the script I'm given, and go beyond and really try to entertain people. So if people like my character or don't like my character, that's great, because actually they have a reaction either way. The thing that I don't like very much is when people are kind of meh about characters. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If somebody goes, "Oh, you played this," meh. It kind of kills me a little bit, because it's like I want you to have a reaction. Either hate the person because they're the villain or antagonist or whatever, or love the character because I put a lot of work into it. But no, never really anticipated Astarion would be quite as well liked as I've heard. I don't read. I try to avoid comments. I think it's quite healthy for the ego and everything. But yes, I've heard he's been well digested, let's say. But yeah, it's been. And I have to say, like, the community are amazing, and I really think that this game reflects greatly on the passion that everybody's thrown into it, from the directors at Pit Stop to the directors in-house in Larian. Greg Lidstone I've been working with on the motion capture side. I've been doing body doubling and stuff and combat in this. Latino, Thierry Van Giesman, and also Alex Van Ostigem. Sorry, their names are difficult to pronounce. Sorry, as well as Sven, as well as the whole team. Josh Whedon, as I mentioned before, he literally cast me in Starring. Without him, I wouldn't have the role. There are so many incredibly talented people that have thrown themselves at this game over, well, their cycle's like something like 6 years or something, I think. And it's hundreds of people hours over 5 different studios, and everybody's driving towards this one amazing experience. And to be a part of that has been not only a blessing, but I feel incredibly touched that people have not only taken me on as an actor, but also I got to direct. I got to do motion capture for it. I was a consultant. Thierry actually invited my company to come and consult with animators to get them to understand performance and motion capture better. So we went to Kuala Lumpur to Canada to Belgium to Guildford as well. I've just been embraced by Larian, and to see the way that they treat people, which is extraordinary, by the way, in-house, like the developers and all the animators and the teams and audio, etc., and how they support people. They don't, everybody's included regardless of your background, gender preference, sexuality preference. It doesn't matter. You're all part of the same team, and it's really open like that. And it's also reflective in the game. There's they added they/them pronoun. I actually worked out roughly the ballpark of how much money that cost to add that in to be more inclusive. Mm-hmm. It's staggering. It's a staggering amount of money purely from just the voice and performance capture, let alone the animating teams that have to then add that into the cycles of all the dialogue. They wanted to, not because they had to necessarily. There's lots of games that don't. And which is fine, it's very, very, very expensive to add it into the cycle. But they did it because they really give a shit, Yeah. And I've got to say, throughout all the team, the stories, the people I've met, the stories I've heard about various situations, which obviously I'm not going to talk about, the amount of support that comes from that company is incredible. I've met 300 odd actors, the main cast are fucking awesome. Deborah Wilde, Jennifer English, Tim Downey, Sam Burt, Theo Solomon, that we can now talk about, who plays the new version of Will, which is amazing, taking a new direction, which is really cool. The sport characters, Matt Mercer, who's a fucking idol, really, as well as J.K. Simmons. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Maggie Robertson, who's a mate of mine anyway, it's just awesome to see, and Doug Cockle's in it. It's like, geez, it's just really amazing, huge amount of people, really cool. Yeah.
So my producer mentioned to me that last month you mentioned that you wanted to do some like Astarion cosplay.
Yes, I'm rather thinking of getting a bespoke outfit for him and taking him out for a walk in the sunshine. Yeah, I've never done cosplay before. I'm slightly nervous.
So I was about to say, so have you found like the tailor or anything like that to like how far along is that project?
I'm whining and dining some tailors at the moment. Nothing specific, darling, but they really have to capture the essence of me. Sort of evil but with panache.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, that's I don't know, not yet. I'm talking to some people. Let's put it that way. Yeah. But that'll be really fun to be able to. I've never done cosplay before, so it's a brave new world. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and do it. Yeah, it'll be funny.
I mean, I think that like a character like Astarion kind of deserves it. So I was about to say if you're going to do it, I think he's like he's the one to do it with.
I think apparently I look like him as well, which is kind of a blast because he was created, like the image of him was created before I was cast as a character to sort of have somebody that's very similar, and I think it would just be really funny.
Yeah,
especially because not everybody knows what I look like, which is kind of nice. So I'd like to go to like conventions and just freak people out.
That's how I always dress.
I have a character called Heisenberg and from Resident Evil Village. And I once went up to somebody who's dressed as Heisenberg. I went, hi, man. You look pretty good there, kid. I like the box. You got a real vibe going on. He went, oh, that's a really good version. That's a really good imitation of Heisenberg. I was like, oh, thanks. Thank you very much. Glad I could entertain you. And walked off. And the guy was like, it was really funny. So I'd love to do that and freak people out. That'd be great.
Yeah. Oh man. One final question for you. You've had roles in some of the
time.
biggest...
I have time, by the way. If you need to do more, I have a bit more time than that because I had something that shifted, so I've got a bit more time. I think.
Okay. In that case, actually, I do have another kind of random question for you. But let's talk about your stream a little bit because you're a pretty prolific Twitch streamer. And I know that
thank you.
I know that Co-Carnage joined you on the voice cast of Baldur's Gate 3.
That's great.
Are there any other famous streamers that you'd like to work with?
The funny thing about the streaming stuff, I did it as a way to keep in touch and see my friends during lockdown, and I just kind of liked it. I don't really view myself as a professional streamer. It's more like a sort of amateur, like a lover of streaming, and therefore I kind of do it as a nice sideline, really. And I got to interview people, which is cool. I don't really know. I don't know. It's a funny one with streamers. Like I don't know whom I would like to do a stream with or that kind of stuff. It's what I kind of like watching people lurking on channels and checking people out and all that stuff. I think Co was definitely somebody I did want to meet. And actually when somebody said, which was completely under wraps at the time, by the way, this guy Co-Carnage can do it, was like, fucking hell. It's like, I want to be in that day. So I think definitely Co was somebody I was really looking forward to meet. And actually having met him, knowing that he's literally lovely, that I don't know if I want to necessarily meet any other streamers to be disappointed by them. But yeah, I've met Co, I've worked with Co. That's awesome. It's great. The ROE guys, the Residents of Evil, I think they're called, from Village, are really lovely. And I've actually done interviews with them. They're really cool. So they're people that I like to see again. And also Dan Allen is a mate as well, and I do interviews with him and stuff like that. Dan Allen Gaming, but I don't think he streams. I think he just does the interview stuff. But yes, I don't know. I'm a bit wary of meeting a streamer and going, not quite as nice as you come across, But Co's great, so I'm happy. A lifetime. I've done one in a lifetime. Co's great. That's perfect. And Co is magnificent in that role, by the way.
Yeah,
I got to say, he's really, really good. We were all in the booth watching. I was sort of giving a tiny bit of input, and we were watching him work, and I was really blown away. I was like, "Fucking, he's really good." So it was great. They picked the right one, which is awesome.
You've had roles in some of like the biggest fantasy franchises ever. Star Wars, Final Fantasy. Baldur's Gate now. Is there a franchise that you're a part of now that would have just like absolutely blown your mind as a child?
D&D. I read like all the Forgotten Realms and D&D books I can get my hands on. We used to play D&D. And I used to play a whole bunch of stuff like Masquerade and Werewolf and all those kind of things, right? Yeah, seriously, like all that stuff came out. I was like, just ate it up, Cyberpunk, etc., etc. So to be in a story that is encapsulated in the world from my childhood is quite a trip. And I used to play Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 to death. And it's an interesting thing when I had the audition, I was actually shooting Final Fantasy 16 performance capture stuff. We were doing a lot of cap stuff in Hungary for 5 months. Shooting there before before the voice work really got started, which I was very lucky to also voice some stuff in Final Fantasy as well. But when we started that, I got the audition for this, and I very quickly worked out what it theoretically could be. I think they offered up like 15 different races you could play, from like, you know, dragon, whatever the thing is, Dragonborn and tiefling and elves and things. I literally auditioned for everything. You were supposed to pick like 3 or 4. I sent in about 12 tapes. I was just like, I'm going to play, I don't give a shit what it is. I'm playing anything in this because I realized what it was.
I'm in
so,
this
yeah, Baldur's
game.
Gate. Yeah. So, and actually, funny enough, it's still a weird thing. I mean, Astarion has been one of the greatest creative gifts I've been given.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very fortunate to Josh Whedon, to Sven as well, Jason Latino, who signed off for me as well from Larian.
So, would you like to know something funny about Jason Latino? I was going to bring this up. I'm friends with his brother. He briefly was my dungeon master. Kyle.
No.
Yeah, Kyle
Jason
Latino
was Kyle Latino was.
Yeah,
okay,
Kyle
Jason.
Latino. Who's like Map Crow on YouTube. I guess I'm shouting him out here. Just absolutely fantastic, like, design work. But he's Jason's brother, so he, like, I mentioned to him that I was like interviewing you like later this week, and he's like, oh, see if he brings up my brother at all.
Jason Latino, there's Tom Paley as well, and Greg Lidstone, who basically are the main cinematics in Dublin and also in Guildford. And those cats have been more generous to me than like so people across my career to thank that have really supported me and have been an absolute fucking dream to work with. There's even something in the game which I'm not going to talk to you about, but it's something to do with Astarion. It's very sensitive, but I can tell you the thing around it. It was something which they championed me. It wasn't supposed to necessarily happen that way. It was a complete moment in the volume. It was just inspiring. I was just inspired by the character, by his story. We're coming to the end of the cycle, and something just happened. I just had this idea to do something, and Greg and Jason championed that moment because they really saw it. They really gave me the space to just play and try something. And for me, it's one of the best moments of the character. And you may not see it because obviously there's so many different possibilities, which is also awesome because then it allows players to do anything. But this moment, if people find it, I hope they might recognize that this was something that happened. Do you know what I mean? So fucking blessed on this job. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
One final question. You know, one of the funny things about, you know, you mentioned playing Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, you know, a lot of those characters have been like, you know, from those games have been like incorporated into like the D&D like mythos, so to speak. You know, would you be surprised if like one day Astarion like appears in an official D&D adventure, or even like has his like name like showed up, you know, show up on like the book?
I would say I demand it. Wouldn't you? I think not only demand it, expectation. One would assume that would be the case. Yeah, man. I mean, I hope so. I hope he's like legacy character now. You know, I got to say, of all the characters I've had to say goodbye to, which you do at the end of a shoot and you do at the end of a project, he is definitely one of the hardest. I've actually accidentally picked up his laugh. Which isn't my normal laugh. I robbed it from another actor I thought I'd admired. So this like that kind of thing, which is his laugh, which is when he gets completely giddy. I now do that. I now do that as part of my natural laugh, which really is embarrassing. So I really hope he stays around. I hope people. I like the fact that people make fan fiction and fan art about the characters they like. Mm-hmm. I think it's deeply cool that, you know, fan fiction, headcanon and stuff exists, and I think it's really nice. So hopefully, you know, if he doesn't live on through beyond, you know, this, at least he'll live on with the players and with the. Invite me to one of your campaigns, darlings. Form a queue, though. Form a queue.
Well, on that note, thank you once again for appearing on our YouTube channel. And Baldur's Gate 3 comes out like literally in like 3 days, like right, August 3rd, August
Yeah,
4th.
Like, it's why I'm hiding on a rooftop somewhere in an island.
Once again, thank you very much. Can't wait to really dig in to Baldur's Gate 3 here, and I'm sure we will be talking about that game a lot over the coming weeks, months, and years on this show, and probably everywhere, to be honest, because I cannot think of another game that people have been excited about like this in a while. So, all right. Well, thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.